Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Micky Watkins, and it's a pleasure to be presenting to you the AMA Probably Nothing. Please meet my guests today, World Mobile Partners. I'm going to introduce you first of all to Alex. Alex, please introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alex Luebke. I'm an aerospace engineer by trade. I've been working on connectivity platforms from satellites to stratospheric platforms to aerostats and ground terminals for over the last 7 years. Nice to be here.
Thank you so much, Alex. It's a pleasure to have you here as well. James, would you introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, I'm James Tagg. So I'm a physicist and inventor. I invented a type of touchscreen, which everyone has in their pocket these days. I was also the first person to make a VoIP call on a mobile phone, and that was all about trying to connect the unconnected. Mainly, this is a long time ago. So when my sisters didn't have any coverage at their home, so I thought, well, I can use VoIP and Wi-Fi and Bluetooth to give them a cellular phone, and here we are, doing it on a big scale.
Amazing. Great intro, James. Thank you very much. Hey, Ben, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Great to be here. Ben Glass. Like Alex, my background's in aerospace engineering. Started up Altaeros out of grad school, and super excited to be part of this partnership and looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much. And last but not least, ladies and gentlemen, Alan Omnet, our COO. Hey, Alan, do you want to say hi?
Hi, everybody. Good to be here. As Micky said, Alan Omnet, Chief Operating Officer. Looking forward to our discussion.
Fantastic. So first, before we begin, I must say I'm very privileged to be working with you, and you guys inspire me. And this is going to be a fantastic AMA. So I'm going to randomly select some questions with my random selector over here. Then the random selector, first of all, says, Ben, what product from Altaeros will World Mobile be using for the first two blimp deployments later this year? Is it the ST200 or the ST Flex?
Yeah, so we're going to be deploying the ST Flex starting in Zanzibar. As the name implies, it's going to offer World Mobile the most flexibility. It's a portable system. They can move it around, really pinpoint and nail down where they want to start growing the network. There may be later on as the network really expands, we may start to deploy some of the ST200s. We're going to be starting with the ST Flex.
I've got to tell you, they're all very, very beautiful. When you see those in the sky, they look incredible. So whilst we're talking about aerostats, Alex, maybe you can help us with this question. For someone who's not familiar with aerostats, how do they fit into the World Mobile network? What roles do they play? Can they serve users directly? And will they act as a backhaul for air nodes?
Okay, a bunch of questions. So aerostats are a fantastic addition to a traditional terrestrial network, right? So now all of a sudden you think of an aerostat as a very, very tall cell tower. The higher you go up, the more area you cover, the more people that you're able to cover. So the intent of this network is to go direct to people's handsets, right to their phones. And so that is the output. It looks just like a terrestrial, a really, really tall cell phone tower. You see cell towers everywhere, generally where you go. This is just a really, really tall one and has a huge amount of capability in terms of its area of coverage. It can also act as the backhaul component for a larger network, and also as a backhaul component if you have other air assets. We talk about potentially, stratospheric platforms in the future. And so, yes, it can also act as backhaul for those types of nodes.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Alex. James, this one is a question for you. It's apparent that there is a high degree of focus on connecting the unconnected and rural areas. Many people believe that this is the only target market for World Mobile. Can you explain what World Mobile is doing to penetrate existing markets where there are already established service providers whilst remaining competitive with this type of network?
Yeah, so what we're building is a network with the aerostat assets that cover a very large area. We need to do that in a way that means that we can also pack them into cities and conurbations, so we can get the density up and therefore the capacity up. And so our design goal is to achieve that, to be able to both cover like the Serengeti, but also cover downtown with essentially the same piece of technology.
Okay, so that leads me on to actually a second question for you, please, is what is the expected coverage of a single aerostat, and how many potential users can one service?
So an aerostat can see the radio horizon, which is about 70 kilometers away. So that's before the curve of the Earth starts to mean you just can't see you. And then we've tested it out to about 55 kilometers at the moment. So we've got a very large capacity, and we can service the people we see in that area. About 80,000 people is what the hardware is rated to cover with the aerostat. We may be able to upgrade that in the future, but that's what our first design objective.
Which is pretty incredible. Okay, fantastic, great answer. Alan, are you ready?
Sure, let's go.
Earth nodes, Earth nodes, Earth nodes.
Yeah.
It has been mentioned that different telcos can directly utilize services and modules run by Earth nodes. Can you touch on this, as well as explain how this impacts the utility of WMT?
So as we deploy the network into unconnected areas, there's a demand from other telcos to get access to the users. So, we will have the opportunity to offer roaming services to other operators and share the revenue stream with nodes that are providing this access. So, we'll have the opportunity to resell other World Mobile telco services. So things such as content as a service, storage as a service, these could all be offered to other operators. The team has got a large amount of experience in the wholesale telecoms industry, and we'll be able to develop wholesale relationships. The sharing economy, it's about working with everyone to achieve the goal of connecting the unconnected. And as Earth node operators, you're part of this journey, and every service that is offered and layered on to the nodes, you will earn rewards from doing that.
The bit of Earth node news. Everybody loves Earth nodes. So from a telco perspective, Alan, what will be handled on the blockchain side? What data will be stored on chain? How is it stored and referenced? And what part does the Cardano blockchain play in all of this?
Okay, right. So if we break it down, the Cardano blockchain, it's the settlement layer. It's the ultimate source of truth and immutability. So what does that mean in practice? So privacy purposes, private transaction data, such as call details and user information, it's anonymized and linked to the public component, which is stored on chain, while the private data is stored in an encrypted private distributed ledger. At the public chain level, the hash of the encrypted private information is stored as metadata to ensure immutability. And then the settlement of those transactions on the public ledger is done either in batches or as single transaction, depends on its priority, while the private ledger is stored in real time. Now, every settlement requires use of World Mobile token, so you can see its clear utility throughout the network.
Okay, great answer. Thank you very much, Alan. We'll head over back to James. I found this one quite an amusing question. And just, ladies and gentlemen, when we were building Yallo, James was building TruePhone, and we were the only two VoIP companies out there. And a few years later, our paths crossed, and it was almost meant to be. So we read the question out there is, I heard that James Tagg has built a telecoms network from scratch. Is this true?
Well, yes, of course it is true. So I built TruePhone. So TruePhone is MVNO in 8 countries. So I don't know whether you call that eight networks or one network. Let's just call it one network. But 8 interconnect and all of the differences there. And then we also ran, we still run. I'm not part of TruePhone anymore, but run a RAN in Montana. So going up tall buildings and radio masts, putting up radio and connecting all of that. And so I have done the end-to-end piece, both on cellular and on VoIP, of course.
Fantastic, and we're doing it again now. How exciting! This is one that's there's been a lot of talk about this, and I think that we can open this up for debate. But many people are not familiar with the difference between World Mobile and Starlink and why they are not competition. Those that are familiar with World Mobile frequently like to point out how Starlink will be better without understanding that they're not the same. Could you please explain how, why / this is not an issue?
I can hop in.
Alex?
Yeah, I'll hop in. I'll start. So Starlink, obviously, it's a massive low Earth orbit constellation of satellites. It's billions of dollars. It's a beautiful constellation for covering the globe. If you want if you need to instantly cover the globe, that's a great asset for that. We're not trying to do that directly. We're trying to cover a lot of people, on the ground straight to their cell phones. So the Starlink requires a dish, and it requires a frequency down conversion, and then convert over to a data stream that a user can access. So it's actually quite complex. You can't just walk around with one of these terminals very easily, and it's quite expensive. And so for connecting the unconnected and going to poor areas and developing areas, Starlink wasn't designed for that.
Well, it won't reach your telephone. It won't reach your phone, right? So unless you put, a 1 meter dish on your head and carry around a big battery, it's not going to do it. So it's a $2,000-$3,000 piece of kit. If you live in Montana in the back of Beyond or whatever, and you can't get connectivity, you can put it up and it gives you the equivalent of picking up, fiber or DSL from your local provider. But it's not a direct-to-device, not direct to the cell phone, and it's fundamentally pretty expensive. We think that the dishes cost $2,000 to $3,000 each.
They're massively subsidized right now, right? By the
you pay $100 a month for a long period of time, and that dish is thrown in. And I'm sure they're cost engineering the dishes every second, but still it's pretty expensive.
I think that also, in addition to not necessarily being competitors in parts of our network, the solutions, whether it's Starlink or OneWeb or some of the other LEO satellites are actually complementary, because to build out that the connectivity layer that we're building, we need that backhaul solution. We need to connect back to the network, and LEO satellites are a great option where fiber doesn't exist. And so probably in more cases than it's potentially competitive, it's complementary, with Starlink providing that backhaul, and the approach that we're taking as essentially just the most cost efficient last mile connection, so that we can bring the cost for the subscribers down. Because an individual subscriber, they obviously can't afford that $500,000, $2,000 ground terminal. But if we can spread that cost over thousands of subscribers, we can start to make the economics work in the markets we're looking at.
I mean, they're a great
fantastic backhaul. Yeah, exactly what it's saying. Took
the
words out of my mouth.
Think about an aerostat is going through like 0.5 gigabits per second, right? It's got a lot of capacity.
Yeah.
Right, a Starlink is like 100 megabits per second. So we've got something that's much more capacity. So Starlink is great as a backup. If we lost the fiber, someone drives a truck through it, cuts the fiber, we don't lose all connectivity. Everyone can get their emails, all right. But we're looking at quite a high capacity system.
Here's a question that was not asked, but I'll ask it because I think it's important that everybody knows. So it's common knowledge that the trailer system for Altaeros is the best in the world. Ben, what is the throughput? What's the maximum throughput? And James, what does that mean for the users on the ground in terms of the fiber up? You have fiber up and fiber down, right?
Yeah, so part of our system has we call it an umbilical tether. It's got embedded power conductors and optical fiber in the tether, and so that really isn't is almost never the constraint. I mean, we can move tens to hundreds of gigabits per second, potentially more. Obviously we're multiplexing the signal, so we're sending it over multiple wavelengths through that tether. So that's really not the bottleneck. And I think that's a pretty important distinction and a unique capability of aerostats. The fact that that pipe exists that's big enough where it just doesn't become a bottleneck.
And that relates to plenty of usage for each user, rather than having to limit each user for 100 megabits connection. We're able to take fiber, whether we need to build that fiber or that fiber's already there, or we need to build fiber over the air using free space optics. As long as we can get it to that trailer, we can propagate it across 70-kilometer radius. So whilst we're on aerostats, Ben, if you can support with this question, that would be great. In the case of extreme winds or some other strange reason, I'm quoting this by the way, the blimp gets cut. Does it have a GPS on it so you can follow and recover it?
Yeah, so we get asked questions like this quite a bit, and in almost every one of those strange scenarios, you're not going to need to follow it, because one of the unique things of our aerostats is that we have 3 tethers that are always connected from the aerostat down to the mooring station, and each one of those tethers is strong enough to hold the ST Flex or later the ST200 in place. So you have that built-in redundancy. And so the probability that you lose all 3 tethers is just vanishingly small. However, in order to satisfy the airspace, the regulatory requirements, we have essentially a rapid deflation system. So in that just absolute freak circumstance where you do lose all 3 tethers, the system will essentially vent the helium and slowly come to the ground, and so it's not going to go drifting off where you have to go chase it down. So yeah, not a big concern.
It's a fair question, right?
Absolutely.
We know the answers, but it's I can imagine people are thinking you're going to have to get in the truck and chase this blimp all the way down the road looking for it, like something out of that Storm movie. I forgot what it's called. But it was a good one.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the one. Okay. Alex, this is to you. So many people in crypto specifically look at the roadmap and the target users that World Mobile has and have a hard time accepting that the targets of 10 to hundreds of millions of users as being a realistic goal. Do you think tens of millions of users connected to World Mobile Network is a realistic goal?
Well, I'll say 2 things. Say first, it's an important goal, right? The objective, why would we just want to connect a select few? The important goal is to connect as many people as possible, right? And open up those markets and open up, all those connections. Realistic, absolutely, right? This is fully within the capability of the technology that we have access today. And people have demonstrated many pieces of this, so it is 100% realistic, right? We need a very capable team, lots of players to be involved in order to make it successful, which is why we have this great group here. But absolutely realistic to within the what we have available from technology today.
Amazing. And then I'll ask you to please to touch on your experience with Google. If you could tell us what you did there and the projects you were involved in, that would be fantastic.
Certainly. So yeah, I've been like I said, been working on connectivity projects from satellites to stratospheric platforms and all the way down to the ground. And they were great projects. The objective was really moonshot thinking. Is don't be afraid just because it's a difficult or challenging problem. How do you go ahead and chip away at it? How do you keep working at it in order to finally achieve something as critical as this? And so, yeah, just building that culture of sort of getting the right people, working on the right teams, and sort of building things out was really a great experience.
So we're using the free space optics that came down from actually the Google constellation. You were involved in that Google constellation. Sorry, I've turned this into my own AMA. For a moment, but you were involved in that first constellation with Google, is that right?
That's correct. Yes, certainly. And so, yeah, the low Earth orbit satellites is again a great way if you need to cover the entire globe. If you want to connect, just focus on the unconnected. As Ben says, it's a could be a good part of that, right? As a complementary. But what really you need to do is you need to take just the right technologies for the right conditions, and I think that's kind of the big lesson learned. We have seen many smaller projects try different pieces of this, but really it requires a custom solution for each area.
It's not
Some
a
areas
one-fit-all approach, is it?
not
Alex?
not one size fits all, and I think that really is the epiphany after looking at what's been tried in the past. Is we actually know what the pieces are and how to employ them to be most effective.
Ben, I saw a message coming back through then. What happens when there is a storm and the aerostat needs to come down? How do users get their signal?
So how do users get their signal when the aerostat
when
is
the
down?
aerostat's down.
Yeah, so a few ways. Obviously, we're building out a hybrid network with both multiple aerostats that can provide overlapping coverage. And so if you've got one aerostat, it may be 70 kilometers from the adjacent aerostat, but there's still, because of that coverage area, there's still potentially overlap there. And so you could have coverage from multiple aerostats. And then as we look at building out some of the terrestrial sites to provide additional layers of coverage, we're building in redundancy into that network. And I think as Alex and James are working on other elements of that, I'm sure they can add into sort of how we build that redundancy.
Sure.
I mean, the big problem with storms is, you get a storm and it takes out the cellular network for 2-3 weeks because it pulls out all the power lines, and then all of the cellular network run out of generator in the area. So the issue is, if you pull down the aerostat for 4 hours at peak wind speed and then put it back up, you've got a complete network again, right? You're all good to go. So the killer for disasters is losing the network for 2 weeks, right? No one goes out in the storm. Everyone needs to go and rescue people immediately after the storm, and that's when you need to get your network back.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Is sort of how we think about resiliency, and part of the autonomy of the aerostats that we've built in is the ability to sense that adverse weather event and dock itself. So you don't have to send a crew out there to land it, to secure it. It will do that automatically, which then allows it to immediately relaunch once that weather event, once that storm is passed, and you've got your service back online, or you've returned your service to sort of full capacity.
And talking about resilience and sustainability, what about helium? This is a question that's come in quite a lot. Is helium's a limited supply? And are you concerned about the future of aerostats with helium?
Yeah, so we this is another great question we get all the time. There's been, over the last really 10 years or so, there's been a few well-publicized helium shortages. You see it when the party store is running out of helium for the birthday balloons. But one of the sort of big reasons for that, or one of the solutions for that, is we're seeing pretty significant increases in the supply side for helium. It's typically produced as a byproduct of natural gas extraction and processing. And starting last year and going through the next 5 years or so, the global supply of helium is going to increase by about 50% in response to the shortages that we've seen over the last 5 or 10 years. So in terms of the near to medium term outlook, we're not seeing it as a major problem. That being said, as we look way out into the future, it is a non-renewable resource, so there is a limited amount of it there. But because aerostats are they're unmanned, they're generally in more remote areas, we can pretty readily make that switch to hydrogen. And hydrogen has a number of pretty compelling advantages. The one big disadvantage is sort of a risk perception issue where people remember a few incidents with hydrogen, but in reality, there's been man-rated hydrogen balloons pretty much continuously from the early 1900s, and it's not so much a technical challenge as that risk perception. If we can, or when we overcome that, hydrogen is great because you can produce it on site. It's cheap, it's abundant, it's renewable, and it has better lift capacity than helium. So again, looking down the line, when the time's right, we can make that.
Right now, we have no problems, right?
Yeah, for the foreseeable
fact.
future, not a problem.
Big fan of hydrogen. Hydrogen's going to be awesome.
Fun fact: in Tanzania has the largest, or one of the largest, supplies of untouched helium in the world.
Yeah. Yep.
So just a coincidence.
And that supply is not even in that 50% increase in supply that I mentioned. So once that 50% comes online, the Tanzania resources will come on, and so we'll be in good shape for the foreseeable future.
Alan, it's been quiet for you. Here's a good one. One question that often comes up is, where does World Mobile make money? Without going into too many details, please can you give a few brief examples of how World Mobile also stands to be profitable? Will you allow MNOs to roam on the network, vendor network, etc., etc., etc.?
Yes. Look, mobile operators, they typically do make money. And there are tried and tested business models, obviously, to do that. Our initial models, they were forecast to make money on the most basic of services. So, the data, the voice, messaging, that's how it was developed. However, there are many additional revenue streams which can be layered onto that base model. As I mentioned earlier, things like roaming, content, storage. We've also got many partners who are ready to offer other services, so microfinance, insurance, education, many other services. Again, all of those services, they generate income not purely for World Mobile, but ultimately for the node operators that are providing the shared infrastructure.
The sharing economy.
Exactly.
How exciting. I'd also go to say that that I'm taking over here for 2 seconds. So as World Mobile, we recognize that by having digital identity, you can be so much more than just a mobile network operator. Mobile network operators, typically they're just based on minute usage, SMS usage, selling services. But with digital identity, you've got the chance for value-added services to be added to the network. And this can be a huge difference in revenue compared to traditional mobile networks that don't have these facilities or these services. As you can hear, ladies and gentlemen, my voice is gone, but I wanted to make sure I'm here tonight, but please excuse the croakiness. Let me move straight across to James. James, money talk. What is the price difference between using an aerostat compared to legacy infrastructure to connect the unconnected?
It's about 10 times less expensive to cover a square kilometer with an aerostat as with a set of towers. So that's the sort of raw thing. And that's mainly because the aerostat can just see more people. So it can look over buildings and look over hills. So you need way fewer of them to cover the people. There's actually another big advantage to them, which is they're much less complex to launch and manage. So if you think if you've got 10 times as many sites to do, you've got site acquisition, licensing, you've got to pour concrete, you're a ton of things that you've got to do that just bog down your management team. So the nice thing with an aerostat is you can drive it to an unused car park somewhere, put it up, and you have a tower working immediately. Whereas you might be, when we were doing stuff in Montana, it was taking us 2 to 3 years to put up a tower, typically, once we've gone through all the permitting, poured concrete, wait for the break in the weather because it's snowy, and all this sort of stuff. So it's just a much simpler way of getting going.
Fantastic answer. Thank you very much. Let's go back over to Alex. Here we go. We kind of touched on this before, Alex, in one of those questions, but maybe we can have a more concise answer to this question. How will WM succeed? And how is it different to Google's endeavors?
So there's been lots of other, companies and groups trying to connect the unconnected. But as we sort of hit on before, one size fits all. Like there was, it's either a constellation of satellites or it's a fleet of stratospheric balloons. And really, I think, we've learned from all of these experiences, right? We stand on the shoulders of those great projects and are able to pick the absolute best pieces of them and do a custom implementation of exactly the right mix of technology. And that just makes us much more effective, makes us faster, and makes us cheaper. All of these benefits are going to make it better, right? And so, yes, we're standing on the shoulders of giants and learned much from these other projects. But they've showed us a great roadmap, right? They've showed us the architectures that work and that don't work. And so now we can perfectly pick the ones and deploy them exactly as needed.
Super exciting. I get adrenaline from this every time I think about it. And we're going to be able to see all of this in the next 6 to 12 months deployed in Zanzibar and in Kenya. Great answer. Right. Alan, the white paper briefly mentions that when a user utilizes a service, several nodes may be involved. Can you elaborate on this and give us an example of how this process works and how this potentially affects the reward system? All the easy questions for you, Alan.
Yeah, I love it. Okay. I'll try and keep it simple. So one example of where that would happen is when a phone call is made. So the node that provides the authentication of the call would be one node in that chain. A node that provides the voice encoding of the call would be another node. And the node that provides the decoding and transmission to the mobile operator on an interconnect may be a third node. So you can see there are multiple nodes throughout the process, and each of those would receive some share of the transaction fee to place a call. So that's probably the most straightforward example I could give to answer that.
Thank you very much. Let me look at the rest of these questions that we've got here and choose something super exciting. Ben, what's different about Altaeros to other aerostat manufacturers, please?
Yeah, so aerostats are not a new technology. They've been around for decades, and honestly, they have a very good track record. They're used extensively by mostly militaries and governments around the world, and despite that good track record, there's a reason why they've been limited to those types of users and customers and applications, and the reason is because they're traditionally, historically, very manually intensive to operate. I mean, it's in a very literal sense, they're hands-on to operate. So prior to Altaeros, an aerostat required a crew of 6 to 10 people typically on site 24/7, 365, and they're literally, if they want to launch or recover an aerostat, they're literally running around, grabbing ropes, toggling joysticks. It's kind of the last piece of aerospace that hasn't benefited from modern controls and autonomy. And so when we first set out at Altaeros to modernize the aerostat platform, that was really the key challenge. Is how do you take this, kind of legacy technology and bring in that modern control approach to be able to eliminate that 6 to 10 person crew. And that's really what we've done. We've brought in, we call it Aerostat Autopilot, basically a suite of software that completely automates the operation of the aerostat, which does two key things to set it apart from other aerostat platforms. One, by getting rid of that 6 to 10 person crew, you're cutting out 80-90% of the cost of operating a platform. And it's that cost that's limited aerostats to the government defense applications, because they're the only ones who can afford to have that crew on site 24/7. It just doesn't work for a commercial application. But just as important as those cost savings, we're also removing the human element in operating the systems, in flight decisions, which really is just a step change improvement in the platform availability. So whereas the traditional aerostats, the manually operated aerostats may have a availability of 60 to 80%. We're talking about, through that automation, having a platform availability of 95%, 98% or better. So really just a huge step change in performance at the same time that you're cutting out the cost by an order of magnitude. And I think those are the key things that we need to do in order to use it in an application like this.
Yeah, so what you're saying is you have the most kick-ass solution that there is available, and you've taken the aerostats to the next level.
I could that's just a much more concise way to say it.
Yeah. All right, so I think we're going to hand over here to Josie, who's in my right ear, who's going to read me out some questions that we have coming in through Twitter and have had some random questions. Josie, do you want to start? Alan, can you explain the difference between WM and WMT and what the two entities are?
Sure. So World Mobile is World Mobile Group, and it is the UK company. WMT is World Mobile Token. World Mobile Token is the entity which is set up to operate the token sale and to do the distribution of the initial tokens throughout the ecosystem to kickstart the sharing economy.
Okay, another one that we've got is, will there be latency issues using multiple nodes to hop through? So I think this is kind of an open question. I can probably answer this. In some cases, yes, but where it doesn't matter. Where it matters, there won't be latency issues. So where the aerostats themselves are able to provide 4G, 3G. I mean, you will have latency issues with 3G because it's 3G, but for stuff like VoIP calls. But actually, when it comes from the sky, no. When it comes from the ground, you'll be using it to mainly stream stuff like Netflix and high data stuff where latency doesn't matter as much as live communications. So a hybrid network, again, a one-fit-all solution doesn't work in order to be able to supply this kind of network. But our hybrid solution does. Josie, can I have the next question, please? When will we get Earth node requirements? Antonio will be on an AMA pretty soon. That's when we'll get Earth node requirements. In the next couple of weeks or so, we'll be hosting the Probably Nothing series, and Antonio is definitely appearing for a spotlight in one of those series. So please wait for those answers. Okay, interesting question. Alan, how are we creating jobs in local communities, and how do we plan to educate people how nodes work?
So, look, the architecture and the aim of what we're doing is all about enabling people to build their own network. So if you take a village that currently doesn't have communications, what do? They have to wait. They've got to wait for the mobile operator to decide that it's going to be profitable to deploy a network where they live, maybe one day, if you're lucky. Now, our model is all about it's a user-driven network. It's a user-driven expansion and deployment of the network. Now, how do they do that? Obviously, there's a set of skills that are required, and as part of our education and planning and deployment, it's to show people how to do it, to build the skills locally, and then for people to help each other and to go out and, you know, if one village has already done it, to share those skills with others. It's about the sharing economy. It's about you know, rapid expansion through people sharing that knowledge and not keeping it constrained within a centralized organization.
Okay, another question thank you, Alan. Another question has just come through. It's a huge problem you're trying to solve. What keeps you motivated? I think that's kind of self-answering, but it'll be interesting to hear that from you guys.
It's a huge problem we're trying to solve.
Right.
What other motivation do we need?
It's a problem worth solving. I think Andy said that on the Africa special, and that's what we live by. You know, half of the planet is unconnected. If we can make a sizable impact and bring technology forward using all of our skills and talents to do that, then this is what I think drives World Mobile, and the snowball gets bigger and bigger and bigger every single day. Josie, I think we should maybe have one or two more questions before we put it close to the evening. Yeah, so I mean, this is probably not for us, but this is a question that Josie's picked out, and RJ can definitely touch on it a little bit later. But how do we stop nefarious actors from vandalizing equipment inside the villages or wherever they are? I mean, I'm very happy to answer that one. When something's yours, it might be livestock, it might be a fishing boat, it might be a shop, and it generates you revenue and income, and it's valuable for you, the chances are that you'll look after it, just like the Uber driver looks after his car, just like the Airbnb person looks after their flat, and just like the African villager or entrepreneur looks after their livestock, they can look after their air node. The air node itself is a very easy to look after device. The batteries are designed to last 10 years. The solar panels on top very rarely need replacement, and as long as it's on and there, it's good. Now, the wonderful thing about internet is that everybody wants it. It doesn't matter who you are, pirates or students or whatever. You need the internet. It's a common thing, and it's a human right. So we've also noticed in the proof of concepts that we've set up, nothing's gone missing, not a single thing. Because when you provide connectivity for people who really want it, they don't want to lose the light, the power, the electricity, the signal, the things that have actually brought them to a place where on the edge of the equator, you've got nighttime at 7 o'clock every night, 8 o'clock on the dot, it's completely pitch black, no street lights. You're not going to damage what is good for you and what's earning revenue for your village. So that's my answer in short to that one. I don't know if anybody wants to add anything. I think we should probably wait for RJ, and he can give us a far more eloquent answer.
That's a good answer.
Thank you. Are you going to be doing more AMAs like this because we love them? Guys, are we going to be doing more AMAs like this?
Of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
Okay. Very, very good. So I think that's a wrap for today. It's been a pleasure to host you guys. I look forward to working with you tomorrow morning, and let's call it a night, and I look forward to the next series. Thank you very much, everybody. Over and out. See you soon. Stay connected.
Great. Bye.